Sports Social Podcast Network.
Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AI Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our Quick Publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AI Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AI Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms, and we have our own apps for Apple and Android. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Hello and welcome to Molby on the Spot, your weekly chance. Thanks Anfield Index Pro to hear the wit and wisdom of your friend and mine, Mr. Jan Molby. It's been a while, so let's welcome him back to your ears and your eyes. Good afternoon, Jan.
Yes, good afternoon, Trevor. It's been an eventful couple of weeks, that's for sure.
Wow, it's almost as if we should not take breaks in some ways, because a certain big clanger dropped in the interim. I think the last time we spoke, I was looking ahead towards going to that final fixture in January at Anfield on the 31st against Chelsea. So obviously that game we have to look back on, but also obviously then the news about the manager, which for some people now is it's not, don't get me wrong, it's not exactly played out, but people have done their talking on it. But I think this is actually a perfect time for us to come to it, because we can possibly take some of the initial emotion and shock out of it and have a little bit of an assessment. And it's not a time for retrospectives about Jürgen Klopp or what a wonderful man and what a wonderful manager, or what will his legacy be, because honestly those are all different things that will depend on the outcome of this season. We can't predict that yet. We can also do all those kind of fond reflections at the end when the man's time is done. It seems a bit premature to be doing it before that. But we do have to have a cold, clinical look at what this means. So rest assured, listeners, we will get a time to have a proper reflection on Klopp's time from Jan, and we'll take it as an episode or two if it requires it. But for now, without being too heartless about it, first of all, give us your feeling about the fact that he is on his way out the door. And then let's take a little cold look at the potential for the future and what you think it looks like, who his replacement might be. Are we well set up for that?
I have to be totally honest, Trevor. I think we spoke on the 25th of January and then a couple of days later. And I generally thought, with the world that we live in, I thought somebody set that up. I thought it was fake news. I have to be honest. Yeah. You know, I got a text message from somebody and I was thinking, what's he talking about? And then I had a look and I thought, this has got to be fake news, hasn't it? Because I sort of work in the industry, don't I? And normally there's whispers, isn't it? You know, we knew about Everton getting charged by the Premier League maybe before it was made official. Little things, you hear whispers and whatever. And there was absolutely nothing. And in a city like Liverpool, I mean, I'm tempted to say even the taxi drivers didn't know, you know what I mean? If they don't know, Trevor, you know, it was a well-kept secret. And then it was kind of trying to digest it all instantly. And I guess you would have been beside yourself, Trevor, with the conspiracies and all the things. You know, I can imagine, you know, you're looking at everything. You're looking at everything. Bloody hell, what's going on here? You know what I mean? And, I have to be honest, Trevor, I've spoken to an awful lot of people who are adamant that there's more to this than what meets the eye. I don't. You know, I think Jürgen went to great lengths of explaining as well as he could in that he felt that he needed to tell the fans it was his story. He felt that he needed to tell them the truth is, and I don't think he'd have gone through that if there was any underlying sort of stories. But there is still people, you know, chucking out stuff from time to time and going, this might not be the reason. I generally believe, Jürgen, that it's a tough job. It's a man who can only give 100%. And you know that, I mean, I've never managed that level never managed under that intensity. But you know where you sense that I'm no longer giving this job maybe what it needs.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I think that was, and I think we've spoken about this before, Trev, isn't that? You know, he's a very honest guy, isn't he? In that, you know, he did a similar thing at Dortmund where he thought, I might be able to do this or to turn it around, but I can't guarantee. And I just thought it was a very honest decision. It was a blow. I was with the day he came out. I was with Sammy Lee, and Sammy was just shell-shocked. You know, he couldn't speak. Every sentence he talked, he came back to the news. He said, this is a dreadful, dreadful day, isn't it? And of course it is, Trevor. But then you look at all the things that we've been through. You know, Shankly resigned in 1974 and, you know, blah, blah, blah. And Kenny decided to leave in the early 90s. And we sold all them goals that Ian Rush scored, and we sold Fernando Torres, and Luis Suarez went to, you know, we will find a way. And let's not forget, we're in a better shape. That when Jürgen came, we're in a better shape than we've been for a lot of years. So a similar job what Jürgen did is not required. Something else is required. We're not going to find a one-for-one. We're not going to find a new Jürgen Klopp. But there is people out there who can continue success.
You said a mouthful there, because that is really the thing, isn't it? Is that we are not looking for that messianic, please lift us out of the doldrums type character anymore. It is a different profile of job completely. And it's a fair testament to Klopp that you could say that this squad is as healthy as any Liverpool squad we've seen, in terms of at least potential, perhaps one or two additions. It does seem to be a project that would be hugely attractive, not just because of the profile of the club, but because of the profile of the squad. And so when you bear that in mind and you think about the kind of job that is now required, I suppose that's where we get into interesting territory, because when Kloppo was appointed first time round, the big rival at the time was Carlo Ancelotti. And if you think about how things might have panned out under Carlo Ancelotti, and this is no disrespect to a huge figure in world football, but Ancelotti's the kind of guy who'll come in and keep things ticking over or reignite the spark in an already wonderful team or whatever it happens to be. I don't think Ancelotti was what we needed, because Klopp's overhaul shows that, I think. Those type of figures now, there are lots of them around still, not as many maybe as there were in the past, but there are lots of them around who you know, would be big profile names, and you would think would automatically therefore be linked with Liverpool. Even something as daft as, say, Jose Mourinho has recently become available on the market again. But to me, that just all seems a bit daft. I don't see that as anything approaching what the club would do, given what we know about the owners and what we hope will be the succession planning. Now, all the staff are leaving. That's not unusual. But you would wonder then, would it be a new project? So then you start thinking about young guys who are up-and-comers. Who are they? Well, we hear a lot about this Ruben Amorim guy, who's got a couple of titles under his belt with Sporting, and seems to be a real up-and-comer. You think about De Zerbi in the Premier League, but does he have any trophies? Hugely, highly admired. These are the type of names that are popping up, and others. Who are you thinking, and who do you think deserves to be favourite or might suit this job?
So,
are you that person who has everything? The coolest merch and those must-have fan threads? Well, over at our Anfield Index shop, we've gone that extra mile when it comes to pimping up your Liverpool collection. From our popular range of bespoke design t-shirts, sweaters, hoodies and hats, to our signature edition mugs, prints and coasters, all provided with fast worldwide shipping. We have something for every red. We also stock official LFC merchandise and are licensed with the Premier League and UEFA to sell official iron-on shirt badges and sleeve patches. As a listener to this podcast, you can get 10% off everything with coupon code AIPRO10. Just head over to AnfieldIndex.shop or find us on Etsy by searching for Anfield Index.
just to start off with what you started off by saying, and you mentioned Carlo Ancelotti and whatever. So the day when you went to Anfield to watch Liverpool play Chelsea, did you enjoy that, Trev? Did you have a good time?
Oh, the whole thing was outstanding, and I had a pal along with me, so you feel a little bit extra pressure that it's going to be a good outing for them. But I'll be honest with you, Jan, it was one of the high watermarks of Liverpool football performance under Klopp. I felt really privileged to be there to watch that, because I can't get over as much as I used to, and it's a few games a season now as opposed to multiple, and it felt like all the stars aligned. It was outrageous. Now, everything was there, all the little things, including the Kloppo fist bumps to the cop at the end. So all boxes were ticked in terms of my friend, who's far more of a tourist football appreciator. But for me, I just felt, wow, I don't want this to end. I came away a little bit sad after that wonderful experience, because I just don't want this roller coaster to end under Klopp. It's been so enjoyable, and I think that's the thing we've even said. Even the bad seasons, there was stuff you could enjoy. So that was the overall feeling, despite the fact that it was great. It was like, oh God, this is really going to end. I have to wave goodbye to this guy, to this feeling that's together here. And how do you replace that with a new boy? I don't know.
So obviously the reason that we didn't meet Trevor was because I was in Denmark, and with the story just having broken about Klopp, we spent a lot of time talking about that. And I said that I feel that in world football there is only two recognised elite coaches, managers, and that's Guardiola and Klopp. I got a fair bit of stick for that, because a lot of people came up with Ancelotti. I understand that if you look purely at Ancelotti's trophies, he's right up there, especially with the Champions League, whatever. But I still don't think there's a guarantee. You appoint Pep Guardiola or you appoint Jürgen Klopp, they will improve your team, yeah? I'm not 100% that Ancelotti falls into that category. And you said it before, we didn't need Carlo Ancelotti in 2015. We don't need him in 2024 either. Besides, I'm not convinced that he's an elite coach. He's done very well. He's perfectly suited to Real Madrid, isn't it? So it's a bit like finding a player. A lot of what Liverpool do is data-based. So you assume that now is it Will Spearman, the analyst will be looking and trying to compare what coaches fit into the way that Liverpool play, because you would assume that we'd want to pick a coach/manager that could play in a similar way, because the way that the squad's been put together. The squad's been put together to play Jurgen Klopp football, isn't it? And then, of course, Alonso is much more of a Pep Guardiola type manager in the way that his teams play, isn't it? So you already mentioned some of them. I mean, I put forward Ruben Amorim every time there's a job available, because I think he's at that level now. It's a bit like, where do you find the next Ballon d'Or winner from? It's the same now, isn't it? I think because there isn't any bulletproof experienced managers, you almost have to go, well, okay, who's going to be the next big thing? Who's going to be the guy for the next 10 or 15 years? And of course, everybody I've spoken to, and they all stress one thing, Trevor, and these are all the best connected journalists to do with Liverpool. They all stress that they're all guessing. There is no information on Liverpool Football Club, but they're all guessing the same guy, Alonso. And it didn't do Alonso any harm whatsoever last weekend when they dismantled Bayern Munich, because if there was anyone in doubt about what he's capable of, I think it was put on shoulder, isn't it? Having said all of that, Trevor, there still is people within this brand saying, but it's FSG, and they're quite capable of making some left-wing decisions, where they go, well, actually, we've seen something in this guy's stats, and we think this guy might be well suited, isn't it? I mean, there was a guy who wrote an excellent piece for ESPN about who the new manager should be, and he actually ended up with, his summary was that Liverpool's next manager should be the guy we face on Saturday, which is Thomas Frank.
Wow.
Based purely on the way Klopp plays and the way that Thomas Frank likes to play the game. Now, it's a sexy name if you're Danish, and it would be a great story. It's not going to happen.
Here's the thing, and you'll appreciate this because you were in changing rooms and communal areas for long periods of time with a man who famously used to take out championship winning medals in a box and, say, grab one of those if you earned one type thing. And there's something about that story that, I don't know, always resonated with me. And it's something to do with a certain amount of humility and a certain amount of the opposite, because it's kind of, well, yeah, this is what we fucking do. There's your medal. Yeah, we won the league. Let's get the next one now. I'm reminded of an attitude that was voiced in that way by my countryman and horrible Mank, Roy Keane, who basically would always say the same thing. The winning would happen, and within a half an hour, you got the impression Keane was sitting miserably in the corner, frowning at people who were celebrating because he wanted to get on with the next one. And there's another one to win, and so on and so forth. So there's a certain sort of attitudinal thing that I don't know if that even exists anymore, but I'll tell you where it does come up and where I'm going with this. You see Thomas Frank, you see De Zerbi, you see a lot of these guys, including Xabi Alonso. And I have one thing to say, which is get out your medals. What did you win? And I don't want to denigrate the guy who wrote that piece for ESPN, because I'm sure it was well put together and well thought out. And there's been a lot of very deep thinking around who might be the most appropriate person to take over with the squad of players we have, and to adapt either their style into this squad of players or to adapt to this squad of players, whatever it happens to be. And I find that all very interesting and thought-provoking. But I don't know, Jan, if I want anyone coming to the club post-Klopp who is not a proven winner. Jürgen Klopp, when he came to the club, was a proven winner. I don't know if it's wise for us to reverse that policy. Even Xabi Alonso feels to me like a kind of an emotional appointment as opposed to a risk-free one. So that's why Amorim is the one that keeps bouncing back into my head, where he might suit the FSG profile of a young up-and-comer, and actually have something behind it as well. This is the kind of conversation that's going to divide people, but we have to be able to give our opinions. What do you think about that slant on things?
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, the only thing I will say is, Trev, that you talk about experience and show me your medals, but the guys with the medals, the guys with the trophies, is there any of them you really want? I don't think there is any more, is there? I think that's a very good point. Actually, I forgot to mention. We should fold it in so you can respond to it as well. One of the people who's been thrown around, one of the names being thrown around, is Zinedine Zidane. Now, Zinedine Zidane was obviously one of the greatest footballers of all time, and has a managerial record in terms of European Cup wins that puts him on a par with anyone in terms of that thing that I was saying. But it's a really well-made point that you make. Do we really think Zidane is going to be able to come in and have this effect and galvanise this Liverpool team and build a squad in his own image? Or is Zidane the figurehead type that can keep the Madrid thing rolling along, like Ancelotti perhaps is? So yeah, it's a really well-made point. I just wanted to throw in Zidane to double down on the strength of that point you're making. Yeah, I mean, it's just that what is required at Liverpool, and that goes for players as well as managers, you have to give of yourself. It's not a job where you can be half-hearted. You have to give yourself. You have to give 100%, isn't it? And I'm not sure Zidane is that type. You couldn't see Zidane doing some of the things that Jürgen Klopp's done over the years in terms of galvanizing the fans or the players, or celebrating or whatever that is, isn't it? So, Ruben Amorim is. You go, yes, okay. But I have a lot of respect for recruitment in Portugal generally. I think there's, certainly the big three clubs do really well with their recruitment. And I thought for Sporting Lisbon to go to Braga and pay 10 million euros for a coach is something you go, wow, is there really any need for that? But he'd obviously seen something. And then he's come in and he's continued the really good work. They play in a good way. I remember last year, the year before, they played Arsenal in the Europa League and knocked Arsenal out over 2 legs. And, instantly one of them, you go, wow, I like this team. It's almost like, is Klopp in charge of this team? That's how I felt, Since then, he's been able to add a couple of trophies, and he's right up there again in a 3-horse race this year. So, and of course, Portuguese coaches generally have a good reputation. What you need, Trevor, is somebody that when football changes again, and football changes quicker than it's ever done, isn't it? What is the way that we play now? We have fullbacks who step in and play in midfield. The number 6s are the most important people. Blah, whatever. In 18 months' time will be something else, and you need somebody who can roll with that. You need somebody who's going to be right at the forefront. That when they see football changing, they get it. You've got to have somebody who gets it and stays ahead of the curve, isn't it? Because if you don't, and you can see that when you look at, let's just deal with England, isn't it? Some of the big clubs in England that's fallen behind for a period, and I tend to look at Manchester United in a...
Hello, I'm here to annoy you. I'm here to annoy you into listening to more of me and more of others on EPL Index. We don't just have the Anfield Index stuff. We've got EPL Index as well, which covers the entirety of the Premier League. And we have 3 podcasts and a whole bunch of really good writing on EPLindex.com. The podcasts are my own Two-Footed podcast, which is every day at 4 p.m, Monday through Friday, covering the whole league. We have A Tad Predictable, hosted by Tadiwa. You know Tadiwa, he does Anfield Index. He presents A Tad Predictable before every Premier League match week. And then Kevin DeVries and his crew on the EPL Roundtable, they're every week after the Premier League match week. So make sure you listen to everything we're doing on EPL Index and follow us there on Twitter at EPL Index. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
David Moyes, Louis van Gaal, Mourinho, they're still very good managers, but to be at the forefront and it's all about being brave now, isn't it, Trevor? You get all these guys, the analysts and the director of football, whatever, they want brave managers, because they have data that tells them how the successful clubs play. And the successful clubs, Manchester City, they are brave. So they want managers who are brave. And I always come back and thinking about, you need a manager who's quite prepared to be brave, but also gets where football is heading, isn't it? So Ruben Amorim would fall into that. Alonso, of course, would fall into that. De Zerbi's got an awful lot going for him. The only thing I worry about De Zerbi is that I think he enjoys being a manager. I think he enjoys being a development manager. He sees great joy in developing players, and he makes 4 or 5. But is he a winner? Is he over the season? Is he a winner? In the end, the only thing that matters, once you've done everything else, that we need to win games. You're a manager of Liverpool, you need to win games.
Yeah, because it's not that project anymore where, there'll be a long period of patience. There will be some, because Liverpool fans are a little bit more, I don't like to say it, but it feels like it, a little bit more educated and therefore more tolerant of a new manager for the most part. I think that's fair to say. Obviously, the papers won't be, the media won't be, but I think he'd have that level of tolerance in the ground. But it isn't that project anymore. It isn't that, let's see what we can do. Can we build towards winning something in 4 years? This is about actually, can we make up for the fact that we've left trophies behind us? That, for all the crying about Manchester City's cheating, however much of it is proved, for all the acknowledgement of their clear financial doping, if you want to use that expression, that we can't compete with, I still think there were trophies there that should have been won, that just should have been won. And it would have required even higher standards than the already ludicrously high standards that the team and the manager set. but it just feels a terrible paltry return for this period that we've enjoyed, you and I talking about so much. It does feel like a paltry return in terms of trophies. A lot can happen at the end of this reign and these last couple of months to address that. And I think that would be fantastic. And I really hope that happens. And I hope that that's going to be the focus of the remaining shows that we do. There is one guy, though, that I want to throw into the mix because he's a bit of a... I don't know where he fits here. You talked about Klopp and Pep as the only two really guaranteed transformative, I will win things with you coaches. The age profile of those two guys is very unusual in that way because also they can move with football as it moves, or be the guy who moves football. And maybe that's what the next young manager would have to have, that strength of character to be the one who changes the way football is played, and everyone's following in our coattails or slipstream or whatever the phrase is. There's one guy who's kind of in the middle, and we have to mention him, and that is our buddy over at Atletico Madrid. Now, it might be incredibly arrogant to think that Diego Simeone could be poachable. I don't know. But, you know, I think we can just assume that the profile of the job at Liverpool post-Klopp is big enough to attract anyone. And if you just take that out, forget about his ties to Atletico and his passion for that club or anything he might have said in the past, this is a huge opportunity to come to Liverpool, take on this squad and see what he can win and possibly have more chance of winning trophies than he does against the two huge clubs he's up against there in Spain. Some people are harsh and consider him to be just a sort of almost like a cheerleader manager, which I think is daft when you consider what he has actually done. Some people might be inclined to say, well, he's getting towards that profile, age profile that you were talking about, where is he going to be able to, you know, move with the game as it changes? Is he very much a kind of one-trick pony in the way that he sets up his teams? Where he does seem to fit, I think an awful lot of people were drawn to this, is that he's a crazy bastard and he's hugely, highly emotional, and you know Anfield's going to love that. So it's an interesting one, yeah?
Well, I knew exactly where you were heading with that. And that is in terms of having that personality that would instantly make you likable to the Liverpool fans. I think it's very difficult, because I don't think Diego Simeone will ever really be appreciated outside of the club he's managing. And I don't think you'll ever be able to understand what he brings until he's the manager of your club. You know, you can kind of look at Atletico Madrid and you will go, in terms of overachieving, and this really is what this is about, isn't it? We have to slightly overachieve to be able to keep up with Manchester City. He's done that, but then you look at some of the things and you go, too much play acting, blah blah, whatever. But I just think that until you get him and you fully understand what he's about, you would never be able to appreciate him. It would certainly be what we spoke about before. It'd be an appointment that came almost from nowhere, wouldn't it? If we were to get involved. But I can fully understand where you're coming from in terms of that. So when you go, I wouldn't mind him being in charge of us, because then you sort of know that he will do everything he can to protect us, isn't he? You know what I mean? He will protect the club and everything with everything he's got, because he's that type of a guy, isn't he? And, you know, he's been so incredibly successful and he's still very popular at Atletico Madrid, isn't he? You know, so yeah, it is definitely an interesting one. I don't think you'd have to be worried about whether he moved with the games or not, because he's got this sort of Jürgen Klopp thing as the motivational thing. Players love playing for him. And he could lead a club the size of Liverpool and the fans would follow him. I have no doubt about that. There will instantly be Liverpool fans going, "Oh, I don't like the way they play." No guarantee that Liverpool would play in the same way that Atletico Madrid play. What you would want from him is his winning mentality, isn't it? And his ability to take a club a long, long way.
So to wrap it up, you often mention, you know, that you would have conversations with a lot of people who, by dint of the fact that they're now working in the same sort of corner of the world as yourself, in various press and TV and various types of media coverage, that you have these chats and have these conversations, and you've rightly said that nobody knows anything. I think that was the most important thing to say right from the off, because it is all speculation that we're doing here. But it does seem to be that some of the lads who seem to know some of the things and seem to hear about, like, for example, at the last time out with the transfer window, yeah, nothing's going to happen, lads. I won't be getting too excited about it. Nothing's going to. The people who seem to get some of the briefings have all sort of hitched their wagon to Xabi Alonso. And of course, that could be all just sort of mass agreement and mass speculation coming together. If I was to ask you who you thought at this stage was the likely favourite, would you go back to that default position of, listen, nobody has a clue, which I would fully get? Or do you have a kind of inkling as well that like an awful lot of your current colleagues might, that it will be Alonso?
Not necessarily, Trevor. The first 48 hours after we heard the news, and we're all scrambling on to try and see who's going to be the next guy, and you want to be the clever one and go, wow, you know, and of course, but then the longer it takes, and I'm not suggesting that's a good or a bad thing for anyone. They're just going through a process that you have to go through, isn't it? But the more I look at it, the more I look at the profile of FSG and what they're quite capable of, and also Alonso. I'd be amazed if Bayern Munich isn't thinking right now, with the problems that they've got with Thomas Tuchel. It's slightly different with Madrid because he's renewed his contract, Ancelotti, isn't it? But then, of course, there's also Bayer Leverkusen. You know, it looks like they're going to win the Bundesliga. He might fancy staying there for another year. He certainly won't do his reputation any harm. So to go back to the guys in the media, they all more or less say, Trevor, when you see them, they go, it's Alonso, isn't it? And that's like, everybody's like waiting for somebody to go, yeah, it is, yeah.
yeah.
And when they say to me, it's Alonso, isn't it? And I go, well, I won't say that. I said, until you write it. And they go, no, we're not at that stage yet. Because everybody's a little bit unsure. Obviously, Mike Gordon's got a big role to play in this. But everybody's a little bit unsure about when it happened. One of the first things we heard was that how Liverpool approach this is that they're going to appoint a director of football before they make the decision, so he can have an input into the next guy, isn't it? Well, we're no nearer appointing a director of football. We've struggled to find the right guy for a long time. Now you almost feel that we need somebody because, you know, as clever as Mike Gordon is and Billy Hogan and whatever, there isn't a lot of soccer expertise amongst them, is there? So it might not be a bad decision to go and get a director of football. Of course, they had to ask Michael Edwards whether he fancied coming back. He doesn't. He set up his own company doing his own thing, isn't it? But that was a natural thing to ask him. Where we go from here, I really don't know. It's so. I think what the press guys are struggling with is the process. You know, is this a thing where the analyst goes, okay, here are the candidates. These are the guys suited. And then Mike Gordon and whoever else sits down and go, well, okay, and let's speak to them, because let's not forget, as much as Klopp was a straightforward choice, Mike Gordon still met him, you know, needed to have a feel for Klopp, sincerity and personality and whatever. And that will also have a small part to play. And so I think the biggest thing is that nobody quite knows. So there is no one to go to, is it? You know, a lot of football clubs have got director of football, and if you got that number, you can always get a little feel in it. But you haven't got that in Liverpool. And the press guys don't really have any communication with Mike Gordon, who's a very, very private man. I don't think he's ever done an interview or anything. You know what I mean? It's just like, this guy here is a big part of making a lot of decisions, isn't it? So yeah, based on, I just think that if Liverpool had decided that it was going to be somebody else or something else was going, there might have been a push towards some of the journalists that stop writing about Alonso, But it's just almost as if Liverpool have kind of gone, carry on guessing for as long as you want, because we haven't made our mind up yet. We're not where we need to be in terms of the selection process.
Yeah, and as you say, there's the added wrinkle of, I think it was either the owner or the director of football at his current club was saying that Xabi's not going anywhere. So it's going to be very interesting over the next while. You can't help but think that some sort of news will have to break. But again, going back right full circle to the start of the chat.
Trevor, just while we're talking about that,
yeah,
what do you think the sensible solution is there? And in terms of, let's say that in the next 2 weeks we know who we want.
Yeah.
Do we then make it public, or do we sit on it, or what is a sensible approach?
Gut feeling is that would be fucking insane. And I'll tell you why. It's because you think then, okay, players' heads are going to start spinning around thinking about how am I going to fit in with this new guy. And also that will be very much the dominant narrative in every press conference that Klopp is having to do. He'll be asked about the new guy and what does he think of the new guy. And with the best one in the world, he's going to get pissed off at that fairly quick. I think you're right. I honestly, at the time, it didn't occur to me, despite the fact that I do like a conspiracy theory. It didn't occur to me that it was anything other than the initial story that broke was somebody had the story and they weren't going to fucking sit in it for much longer. So get out ahead of it if you want to get out ahead of it. And I think the way it happened, you really got the genuine impression that players had only just been told nearly as recently as us. It wasn't a whole lot longer before we were informed that they were informed. But we have a thing here now where there's this sort of togetherness with the group, Jan. The emotional bond between these guys is as strong as anything you'll find in world football. And I don't think you do anything to sour that. If you know who it's going to be, I think you put down every possible measure that Liverpool are capable of putting in to make sure that news doesn't get out. That's my initial reaction. I could be miles off. What do you reckon?
Yeah, that would be my preferred option. Absolutely. And as you say, is it because of the way that football is covered these days, it would be a daily story. And surely, see, when this happened, and somebody asked me, will this affect the players? And my initial response was, no, I don't think it will. There will now be a generally feel. I mean, they'd already named this season the last dance, hadn't they? And I said, no, I don't think it will. I just think, if anything, it will motivate them and galvanize them, whatever, if they needed that. But then you think,
I don't need a VPN. I've got nothing to hide. This is what I used to tell myself before I hooked up with LibertyShield.com. Not only is my home internet now fully encrypted, but I can now access all the websites I want, whenever I want, and do so from absolutely anywhere. As a Liverpool fan, I love to know I can now watch every match, regardless of whether it's on UK TV or not. My Liberty Shield VPN makes sure nothing is blocked and guarantees me super fast streaming speed throughout that match. You can get connected right now with their software package, which includes a 48-hour no-obligation free trial and instant access to their apps for Apple, Android, Fire TV, PC, Mac and Android TV. Or go a step further like I have and get one of their pre-configured VPN routers. These small but powerful devices allow you to easily connect every device in your home to VPN, making it the perfect solution for smart TVs, Mac boxes and games consoles. Visit LibertyShield.com today and use coupon code AIVPN25 to get 25% off at checkout.
But why wouldn't it affect them, Trevor? Because the enormity of the story, it's such a massive, massive story, and you think that, would that affect them at some stage? It hasn't, although we had a non-show at the Emirates in it, but I don't think that was linked to anything to do with that. Isn't it? But I still think it's interesting to keep an eye on how is the motivation and is there anything taking their minds elsewhere, isn't it? Because it is a. I mean, I remember it from Kenny, and it's a similar thing, isn't it? Kenny in terms of figures at Liverpool Football Club is up there with Jürgen Klopp, isn't it? And how that eventually. I mean, we had a few things, didn't we? Heysel and Hillsborough and Kenny Dalglish and whatever. And eventually, you think you can sort of overcome and override all these things, isn't it? But they do at some stage. You look back and you go, maybe it was too much, isn't it? So I just wonder where this will all end.
Yeah, it's so interesting, and I was too young to remember the Shankly thing, but those video clips of the young lads in the street being told, and just the bafflement. They're like, "What? You're having a laugh?" But my version of that was when Kenny left in '91, and that was ridiculous. I felt entirely lost. And if you recall, what the club did then was they made what seemed to be in keeping with the boot room tradition, but perhaps not the right move for the time, was a kind of semi-emotional appointment. Now, the lad had a track record that he was building, but Souness felt a bit like the part of me that wanted the security blanket of the boot room appointment went, oh, thank God, we've got a proper red back in. And then we could see, and you lived through the experience of how that went, and it wasn't good for almost anyone involved. There was one FA Cup in that era, unless I'm mistaken, as opposed to keeping the ball rolling and staying in the top two and all that type of thing going forward. So I that's where I sort of have my bat signal going off about Xabi Alonso. It's 15 years since Xabi Alonso left. And Xabi Alonso was a wonderful, wonderful footballer, but perhaps not quite as impactful as some people seem to think that he was over that period of time. He was there for the miracle of Istanbul and central to it. And he had a couple of wonderful seasons where he was just majestic to watch for either a full season or little parts of the season. It was only really when he went on then and had his next two spells at those two huge other clubs, where he started winning trophy after trophy, that you go, well, that's the Alonso that we started to see then the Champions League every week, and to feel regret that we don't have him. So I'd be wary of that emotional sort of response, and I think FSG have enough about them not to make that kind of emotional appointment. If we're being honest, the extension of Kenny's second contract was probably one of those as well, where it was felt almost fan-led. And, I was one of the few voices, and this is my hero growing up, saying, I don't know if I want Kane to get another year because I don't want him to fuck up his legacy. So this is how I feel when it comes to the whole Xabi Alonso story. But there are many, many different factors, and I think we've done a good job of highlighting as many of them as possible there. And we'll try and keep over the story between now and the end. But I think we both might have the right angle in terms of it's not a story you want floating around the background every single week, because the first week was all about, will Van Dijk stay now? Will Mo Salah stay now? Where focusing in on what's it going to be like post-Klopp? Will these players be wanting to hang around at this club? And you know what the media is like. And once you make that appointment, there could be history with some of the players that we have with this guy or something like that. It's a potential minefield. I hope the club decide to avoid it. There's two big things I want to get to. Obviously, we've got Brentford at the weekend and Luton, and I want to talk about both those games briefly because that's what we do on this show. But we're kind of running out of time. It's a very important subject that we want to address. The only other thing that I want to definitely touch on is we could talk about injuries, we could talk about selections and all the rest of it, but we can fold that into the games coming up. We do have this potential, Jan, of 4 trophies. And one of them, of course, is the most immediate one that can be won, which is the Carabao Cup against Chelsea on the 25th. In between that, we have the 2 games we're going to talk about in a minute. Brentford on Saturday, the midday kickoff, 12:30. And then we've got on the Wednesday night, Luton. And we're away at Brentford, at home to Luton. 2 fixtures that will provide their own issues. Then we go to Chelsea on the following Sunday to play that League Cup final. The immediate game after that is 3 days later. We will find out whether we stay in the FA Cup because we have to host Southampton. And then, of course, we're going to have our Europa League encounter after Nottingham Forest on the 2nd of March. I think we play on the 7th of March. We have that Europa League game. We have City. We have the next Europa League game. This is going to be fucking mental, Jan. And then Everton. There is no let up here at all. So I wanted to know what you think in terms of, are you still on that bandwagon, or were you ever really on that bandwagon of like, let's see, can we win all these trophies? That was my initial reaction, and I never got a chance to talk to you about this. The only fitting tribute to Jürgen Klopp is win every fucking trophy that's available to us between now and the end of the season, because we can win them all. We're in the final of the first one. We'd have to consider ourselves amongst the favourites for the FA Cup in terms of who's left. The draw has been favourable in terms of eliminating some of the other guys. We have to consider ourselves the favourite for the Europa League to win in that trophy. And we're currently top of the league. So if you don't consider yourselves favourites as at top of the league, the only team that can overhaul us, we have to play them. So it's still in our hands. You put all of that stuff together, and I'm sort of bullish about how much we can do. What I'm getting to is, should we start prioritising, or is it just, as you said, the last dance? Just crazy times, each and every game, see what we can get.
I think we need to be all in, Trevor. And I think Klopp has already been always been aware of the importance of building a squad that's capable of playing 60 games a year.
Yeah.
And generally he's got that right, and with a lot of durability. He's got the odd ones, Naby Keita and Thiago, wrong, isn't it? But generally, players who are available, players who just keep going, isn't it? So, there will be people saying, why did we rearrange the Luton game in the week leading up to the Carabao Cup final, is it? But that's not an issue, is it? Because Liverpool is a football club that play 3 games a week. It's not an issue. It's what we do, isn't it? So when you talk about, and the way you separate the 4 trophies, and when you look at it, it's exactly the same thing we've done for the last 6 years. Every time we talk about a Liverpool game, we think we're going to win. That's still the feeling, isn't it? I still sit here now and think that when we play City on the 9th or the 10th of March, I think we'll win. We're not going to win every game from now to the end of the season, but I think we will when we break them down and we talk about every one of them individually, isn't it? So Carabao Cup, we're favourites against Chelsea, although Chelsea have found a little bit of form. That is a slight worry. Like you said, the FA Cup, you need a bit of luck with the draw, blah, blah, whatever. Europa League, who's our dangers? Maybe 1 or 2 of the teams who dropped out from the Champions League who are playing a qualifying round starting this evening and next Thursday. And then, of course, Leverkusen, they would be the only other team that could give us any trouble there. And then you got the Premier League, a 3-horse race. I don't know whether I'm 100% convinced it's a 3-horse race, but it's certainly tight. It's exciting, isn't it? We have these 2 games, Trevor, very similar sort of opposition. Brentford and Luton, very direct, a lot of physical players. They love set pieces, free kick corners, long throw-ins and whatever. So both of those games, I expect we have miles more quality than both of them. But we have seen over the last 2 years going to Brentford is not a place we enjoy going to.
Yeah, and it's a good way of queuing up a little bit of chat about those last 2 games. I mean, we could have talked about any number of things, like the disappointment of the Arsenal result. It just didn't seem to jive with anything that's gone in the last while at all. We could have had a really upbeat chat about how incredible Conor Bradley has been. To the extent that, there were a few of us who were thinking, it's okay, Trent, you can take your time coming back. It's Trent Alexander-Arnold, the best in the world, theoretically, and quite often in actuality in his position. So there are a lot of positives, a lot of negatives, but we have 2 games to look forward to before you and I'll get a chance to speak before the Carling Cup final, likely, and that is the one against Brentford and then the one against Luton. And in terms of just where everything is sitting in terms of the table, it is very heartening to look at the Reds there at the top. Everyone will talk about City's game in hand, but as you mentioned, we have a game against them, and it remains therefore in Liverpool's paws. City are on an outrageous run, which we know, but we're not too bad ourselves. And if the wheels don't come off, everything's up for grabs. But in a season where, we've been thereabouts, Thomas Frank and Brentford are currently sitting in 14th. And they have 25 points there. So they're very comfortably mid-table. But to put it into perspective, the jump up to 10th place, where our Carabao Cup final opponents are, is 34 points. That's a 9-point gap. And even though Brentford have a game in hand there over Chelsea in 10th, they're not getting anywhere near mid-table for a while. And it will take quite a lot of teams falling away, like Wolves and Fulham and Brighton and Chelsea, for them to get into the top 10 or anywhere near it. So I don't know what to make of the challenge offered by them, except to say that I do have a huge amount of respect for any time I've seen him play under Frank. I think he's really, really good at what he does. I like the way that he has them set up. Now, their last time out was on Saturday. They had a very impressive away win at Wolves, 2-0. 3-1 was what City beat them in the previous game. 3-2 was what Tottenham beat them in the game before that. Brentford themselves had a 3-2 win over Forest in the game before that. They went out again, the defeat to Wolves they were defeated by Wolves in the FA Cup. 3-2. And then the previous league game was another reversal for them, 3-1 defeat at Palace. So they're a team that can pull off a result. They're a team that have a very specific way of playing under Frank. As you said, he's one of the guys who's been mentioned as a potential successor in any of the betting companies' lists that you see. What do you make of this challenge for us at lunchtime on Saturday, given where it's wedged in there ahead of another big league game ahead of our first chance of silverware?
Yeah, so we played twice at Brentford since they got promoted to the Premier League, and the first one we drew 3-3, and last year we lost 3-1. So we conceded 6 goals already. When we play Brentford, we have 2 problems. One of them is their pace on the break. They got a problem with the pace on the break is all injured. Rico Henry, the left back, is out injured. Kevin Schade, the German wide man that they bought, he's injured. Brian Mbeumo, he's injured. So that is a problem. The other problem we have against Brentford is set pieces. Last year, I don't know if you remember last year, Trevor, we conceded 4 goals from 4 consecutive corners. 2 of them were disallowed, but nevertheless, we conceded 4 goals from 4 consecutive corners. So that is a problem. They got real height. Again, I think it'd be a really, really difficult game. They've also got their players back from the AFCON and the Asian Cup and whatever, so they'll be strong. They'll have good options off the bench. And of course, the big thing to them, and they really needed that win at Wolves so they didn't get dragged themselves into a relegation battle. But Ivan Toney's back. He's got 3 goals in 4 games since he returned. He's a handful. And so I look at this, and yet again, I think, I was there the other day when they played Manchester City, and they didn't really have a sniff. City were way too good and dominated and won the game 3-1, isn't it? I just hope that we have similar quality. We can do a similar thing, isn't it? But it is always one of those games that I do worry about. They've been to Anfield on a couple of occasions, Brentford, and been powder puff, never showed up. So Liverpool fans who've only seen them at Anfield go, they're not all that. But they are all that when they play us at their place. So I think it's a really difficult game.
I think you're spot on there in your take. Absolutely spot on. The opponents after them are a couple of places behind them in the league on 20 points. 17th place is Luton, and ahead of the last game. I know you were finding it hard to see a whole lot in them. Now, to be fair to Luton, they sort of, to be fair, they put it up to us. Their most recent set of results would be less impressive even than Brentford's, and then occasionally there's one or two real belters in there. They got beat 3-1 by Sheffield United, which isn't a good result, and it says that they mightn't be at their very, very best at the moment. 4-4 with Newcastle was the previous one, which is a mental result, but then Newcastle are a bit of a mental team at the moment. Nowhere really where I think they'd like to have been at this point in the season. They had a big impressive win, 4-0 over Brighton in the previous one. That was at Luton. Stayed in the FA Cup by beating Everton 2-1 on the 27th of January. And the two before that were another FA Cup replay win and a 1-1 with Burnley. So a completely different kettle of fish and challenge offered by Luton. What do you think of them and what they've done so far? Do you reckon they're going to be safe-ish by the end of the season, or what's your gut feeling on them?
I think they've done remarkable. I look at their squad, and instantly when you look at squad, Trevor, you always look for Premier League quality. And you think, where is the Premier League qualities? Well, in Luton, the Premier League quality is in their desire, isn't it? They got unbelievable desire. They don't get weighed down by disappointments. They just carry on and go, this is what we are. We're playing a very simple way. We get the ball forward quick. They win an awful lot of corners. They have a lot of corners in all their games to put a lot of pressure on you. But in terms of quality, real quality, they don't have an awful lot. I mean, Ross Barkley has probably been just about their best player this season. So, but apart from him, they got a lot of endeavour, a lot of fight. Is that enough, Trevor? It shouldn't be. In terms of a quality squad, as I said before, they don't have an awful lot. So it's like, yeah, okay, I understand what they got, but let's just make it a game of football, isn't it? Where we comfortably should be able to give them a bit of a run around.
Now, let's do this live on the air just so we can get an idea when we're going to have an opportunity to get our next chat in. So we have the game on Saturday and then we have the game on Wednesday. Do you reckon you might be able to do Thursday after that, or are you off on your jollies?
No, I'm doing Champions League next week, but I'm available next Thursday, which is after the two league games.
After the two, yeah. And
then looking forward to the first trophy of the season.
Yeah, I like where you've gone with that. Yes, well, that seems like a fitting note for us to start wrapping things up on. Fantastic to catch up with you, man. Feels like we could do about 3 hours here and still not even touch the sides in terms of the amount of topics, but people will understand that it's important to get your take on the managerial thing, and it was a very, very enjoyable over and back there on that, as well as all the other ones as usual. So let's finish as we always do with getting your take on those two games that will be played before you and I get to talk to each other next. So we'll begin with the league game at Brentford.
Yeah, so we beat Burnley 3-1 at Anfield, but we gave up a few chances. I thought Burnley had a few opportunities, and I fully expect Brentford will have the same. So I think Brentford will go there, and it'll be Brentford 2, Liverpool 3. I think it'll be a real humding of a game. It normally is when we go down there. And then on a Wednesday at Anfield, yes, massive respect for what Luton have achieved so far. But in terms of pure football ability, we're far superior. So Liverpool 4, Luton 1.
Love it. And it will have to be that way. I mean, it's, as you said earlier on, it's not guaranteed that Liverpool will win every game, and they are likely to not win every game, but it will have to be almost every game if we're going to achieve this wonderful thing that we want to achieve, to send Jürgen off with the best possible sort of tribute to what he has brought to the club. So we'll look forward to hopefully being able to comment and talk about a whole big haul of trophies. And for yet another show, Jan, where we got through as many of the major topics as possible. Thanks very much.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the most likely outcome is that we're not going to win the quadruple, isn't it? But we have to believe that we can do it, isn't it? And when we move from game to game, we do believe it. So, it is quite exciting. It's like enjoy the last 3 months with Jürgen Klopp and see how we can send them off.
Absolutely, we will, and we'll be along for the ride. Hopefully you'll stay with us. Great to hear your feedback in the show, by the way, listeners. We do very much appreciate that, and it's always lovely to hear how much you appreciate hearing the big man's take on things. We will continue to do that until the end of the Klopp era for sure, and we'll see how successful it will be. So from Jan Molby, from myself, Trev Downey, this is Molby on the spot for Anfield Index Pro. We'll see you soon.
We hope you enjoyed listening to this Anfield Index show. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel so future podcasts find their way to your device automatically. There's nothing quite like fan engagement, and we'd love to know what you think of anything discussed on this show. The best way to get in touch is over on our free Discord community, where both podcasters and listeners debate the hottest LFC topics 24/7. Sign up free now at anfieldindex.com/Discord. You won't regret it. You can also follow us on Twitter at Anfield Index and find us on Facebook by searching for Anfield Index. Oh, and before you go, we'd love it if you could leave us a 5-star review on your favourite podcast app. It only takes a couple of seconds, and it means the world to the people who create these free shows.
Sports Social Podcast Network.